You are watching a CNN Philippines special presentation. I'm Rico Hizon, and today we speak to one of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s cabinet members for policy directions following the Chief Executive's first State of the Nation address. Over the past 2 decades, digital technology radically transformed societies worldwide, which made almost everything at the tips of your fingers, and in the past 2 years, that accelerated due to the pandemic. In his first State of the Nation address, the President vowed to address inequalities brought about by the digital divide by making internet connection accessible to all.
I have therefore tasked the DICT to deploy digital connectivity across our various islands. This will be done through the implementation of the National Broadband Plan, the Common Tower Program, connecting our geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas via our Broadband ng Masa project. All relevant modes of digital transport should be utilized. These may be through a combination of terrestrial or submarine fiber optics, wireless, and even satellite technology.
Where will these initiatives for universal connectivity take us, and how do we make this happen? We're joined now by Information and Communications Technology Secretary Ivan John Uy. Secretary Uy, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody wants to find out. All of us are connected on phones, on our laptops around the country. Everyone wants to find out what is your near terms, at least 6 to 9 months plan for DICT.
Well, we're looking at two areas, expanding the National Broadband Plan, and connecting our geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. So these two are being prioritized, and we are already in the process of getting it out with the signing of a memorandum just earlier today with the NGCP with respect to the national broadband connectivity. This links the Facebook connection to Baler and to Poro Point. And then that connects to the national grid.
So, Secretary, how will this narrow the digital divide in the country?
Well, so this will be the first time where government now gets into the picture to provide broadband connectivity. In the past, we've always relied on the private sector to provide that backbone. So with this backbone, the private sector can continue servicing the areas that they find profitable. But in the areas that they hesitate to venture because of feasibility concerns, then government comes in with its own broadband backbone, and then we connect these areas.
So with these twin plans, how many more of our kababayans will be connected to the internet?
We're looking at in the short term, we should be able to increase about 20% more. But in the long term, we really are looking at having at least a coverage of about 90% of the entire country.
Sec Ivan, let's put this into perspective. How extensive right now is the digital divide in the country?
Oh, it's quite extensive. Many of our areas are actually unserved or underserved. And when we say underserved, they do have some form of connectivity, but they have to climb up coconut trees in order to get that connection. So it's a large segment because of our islands, the challenge of getting into our islands and or up in the mountains. So we need to bridge that, and by bridging that, definitely we expect an increase in our economic activity.
And for how much longer before the total implementation of these programs where all Filipinos can be interconnected?
It's programmed within the next within this 6-year period, but we want to scale it up and speed it up. hopefully, before the midterms, we should have a very significant penetration in the GIDA areas, as well as improve connectivity in the areas that are underserved.
When you say significant, by how many percent? By midterms, by 2025?
Just to give you an example, our current government capacity, when we bring in now the Facebook connectivity of 2 terabits, our capacity will increase by 50 times. 50 times our current government capacity. So that will be a very significant jump from the past. However, we also expect that the local governments now, because of better connection, will now put more apps into the network, which means that the demand for even more connectivity will be there. So we are anticipating that. And recently there was an inauguration of this Jupiter cable that came in that increases the capacity of one of the telcos from 20 terabits to 60 terabits. So it's going to have a tremendous impact on our connectivity.
That's a huge jump. Let's talk about e-governance now, Secretary Ivan. How is the DICT, under your leadership, accelerating the digital transformation across the board, from the various departments to the agencies?
The challenge there is that the government departments are operating in silos. And when they do their digitalization, they do it separately, without coordination, without sharing that information with other sectors of government.
So instead of working in different silos, are you working with all of these departments so they will have synergy, they will work as one?
So that's where the DICT comes in. We try to harmonize the data, we try to harmonize the data formats, and ensure the sharing of that information. And the challenge there really is to get the different departments and the different heads of the departments to cooperate with the ICT, and before they sign anything with anybody, is for the ICT to just take a look at the system that they're committing themselves into, to make sure that it works well with all the other systems.
Do you have a deadline for this?
It's actually continuing. We are targeting agencies that are already more mature in their digitalization efforts, and do that first. So the areas that the agencies that still are very far behind, that may come on board much later.
Because a lot of people are saying, Secretary Ivan, that the digitalization of the government will definitely weed out corruption, especially in agencies like the Bureau of Customs and the Bureau of Internal Revenue.
Definitely, and that is one of the challenges that we face, because many of those who thrive on corruption will not be very cooperative. I mean, you hear stories of intentionally pulling the plugs out of the computers so that they tell you that it's not working and the project failed, and you go back to manual.
And is the political will there to really interconnect all of the government departments and agencies?
The political will is coming straight from the top. And I think that will definitely play a very major role in the success of our deployment.
Secretary Uy, we will take this short break, and when we come back, we will continue our one-on-one with DICT Secretary Ivan Uy. And when we come back, we'll be discussing accelerating internet speeds, connectivity, and more affordable rates. This is a CNN Philippines special presentation. Stay tuned. You're watching a CNN Philippines special presentation. I'm Rico Hizon. Our guest for this one-on-one special is Information and Communications Technology Secretary Ivan John Uy. All right, Secretary Uy, let's continue our discussion. And of course, everyone knows that the country has one of the slowest internet speeds in Southeast Asia. And our rates are also quite high. What must be done?
Well, competition is driving the rates lower now. If you've actually observed your bills, we're already getting very good bandwidth, and the rates are still the same. So in the past, where you were getting like 10 Mbps for 1299, they're now offering 50 Mbps. So that's actually at times 5 in terms of speed for the same amount. Then, of course, we will be providing additional bandwidth through the subterranean, subsea or undersea cable that's coming in through Baler with Facebook, and the Jupiter underwater cable also that increases the bandwidth from 20 terabits to 60 terabits for the PLDT backbone.
All right. Currently, we only have several players in this space, and the president wants more competition, particularly from foreign investors. Do you think more players will solve our connectivity issues?
Competition is always good, but it's good to a certain extent. You want it to be competitive so that price and quality would be better, but at the same time, you want also the providers to earn. Otherwise, they close down, and then we lose everything. So we do have a lot of interest for foreign direct investments. And one of the first that are actually looking at us is Starlink. They are, I think, one of the first telecommunications provider through satellite that sees the Public Service Act liberalization of investments as an opportunity to come into the country.
Everyone is excited about Elon Musk and the entry of Starlink, but they also want to find out how soon will they start their services in the country.
Their target for commercial operation is end of the year. So
why is it still end of the year? Why can it not be as soon as the third quarter?
They need to build their Earth stations. So they do have the satellites up there, but those satellites have to have relay stations on Earth. So the Earth stations, the equipment is already en route to the Philippines, and what we're doing is we're facilitating it. We're working with the NTC, we're working with the BOC in order to facilitate the entry of those equipment, pay all the duties and taxes, and get it out so they can install it on the ground quickly.
Sec Ivan, everyone also wants to know what will be the reach of Starlink's broadband internet connection. You previously said that they will not reach the middle and southern part of the Philippines because there are less users there. Is this still the case now?
Actually, it's not less users. The number of satellites that's sent up there actually only initially covers the northern hemisphere. But in my recent meeting with their representative here, they assured me that by middle of next year, they'll have full 100% coverage for the Philippines. And the Philippines is their showcase for the rest of Asia. So we're the first.
So we will be the first as a showcase. But are there also other foreign investors apart from Elon Musk Starlink that are interested to enter the Philippines?
So a lot of these investors are looking at how the Philippines treat Elon Musk and treat their investment here. Are the liberalization provided in the Public Service Act and all the different laws being implemented properly? If these are done well and they see that the Philippines indeed is open for business for foreign direct investments in these areas, I'm sure they're going to come in.
Sec Ivan, Converge ICT CEO Dennis Uy said that Starlink needs a congressional franchise in order to access spectrum. What do you make of Dennis's statement?
Well, that will have to be decided by NTC, since NTC is the one that's managing the spectrum. But if these are satellite and these are already being used by many of the different satellite providers, there might be no need. But if they're going to use spectrum to transmit within the country, then that might be what Mr. Dennis Uy is referring to. So we'll leave it to the National Telecommunications Commission to handle that area.
The Philippines is a disaster-prone nation, Sec Ivan. What is the role of ICT in disaster resilience, and how will this be improved under your watch?
Disaster resilience involves not just energy, not just food, but also one of the vital components is telecommunications. And we saw it in the last Typhoon Odette, which hit the Visayas area, where telecommunications was down for several weeks, even months. So DICT has already implemented a disaster resiliency plan, especially on the telecommunications. We actually have invested in mobile communications infrastructure. These are vans connected through satellite, which we can pre-deploy in the disaster areas, exactly what we did in Abra during the last earthquake, which happened a couple of weeks ago. We immediately deployed our mobile connectivity to Abra so that they can communicate even when the power is down, even when the communications are down.
All right. We will continue our discussion, Sec Ivan, in a minute. And we'll be taking a quick break. And when we come back, DICT Secretary Ivan John Uy will discuss cybersecurity, the SIM card registration bill, and more. This is a CNN Philippines special presentation. Keep it right here. I'm Rico Hizon. Glad you're staying with us for this CNN Philippines special presentation. I'm Rico Hizon. Our guest, DICT Secretary Ivan John Uy. Secretary Ivan, let's take a look at cybersecurity. That is a major problem right now for many of us Filipinos. What is the latest on the National Cybersecurity Plan, which was unveiled in 2017?
So it's a 5-year plan, and it actually ends this year, 2022. We already have a group that's preparing for our next phase, which is for 2022 to 2027. So it's the next 5 years of our cybersecurity.
What are the salient features of this plan?
Well, it's a continuing plan. We've identified our critical cyber infrastructure, and we need to secure those critical infrastructure. It identifies areas where we need to build up our cyber defense capability, especially since we're already seeing this in the Ukraine-Russian conflict, as well as the recent Taiwan issue, where cyber attacks are launched when there are political tensions going on.
So where are we right now in terms of cyber defense? Because the former DICT chief said we're at level 1 in terms of cybersecurity, and he wants a level 5. How do you plan to jump from 1 to 5 in terms of cybersecurity maturity levels?
Well, we are in talks and with many other countries that have very advanced cybersecurity capabilities, and they have already expressed their interest in working with the Philippine government in establishing a more robust and more resilient cybersecurity framework.
When are we going to reach that point of robust and a more resilient cybersecurity defense?
That will depend on the output of the cybersecurity plan that we're actually already making this time. So we will have more information on that perhaps in a few months' time.
And do our kababayans really have to be more aware about a lot of these scams and a lot of these viruses that are hitting the country?
Yes, well, it's pervasive. It's not just the Philippines that's being victimized. It's all over the world. And so cybersecurity awareness should be part of it, creating a culture that is sensitive to cyber hygiene, and training our young children to be more aware that when they go on the internet, when they play games and they make friends online, there has to be at the back of their mind, constantly aware the potential for cyber threats, cyber criminals, cyber fraud, because quite often these cyber criminals exploit the naivety of the kids and enter the system of the house through these children.
And Sec Ivan, not only that, we also receive a lot of these what you call text scams, no?
Yes.
Text scams, messages from unknown numbers. And most would ignore them, just like myself. I receive about maybe 4 to 5 every day. What is the DICT doing about these kinds of scams on our phones?
I've already formulated the task force that's working with the telcos, working with the NTC, and working with law enforcement to assess these guys, and we should be coming out with results pretty soon.
How did they get my number? How did they get my number?
Well, there are many ways of doing it. One of the leaks that we saw was because of the contact tracing that happened during the past 2 years, where data was not really secured properly, because you just fill up forms and you leave it there, and people just gather those information. But I think with the SIM card registration and with the national ID being deployed, that's going to solve that.
I was about to get to those two topics.
Yes.
The SIM card registration bill, which was vetoed by former President Duterte.
Yes.
Should it be revived?
Definitely.
With the social media aspect?
Well, that will have to come from our legislators, how they feel it should be addressed. But the SIM card registration will solve a lot of our problems, especially on this cyber fraud and cyber criminals exploiting this technology.
And of course, banks. How are you also working with banks to make sure that Filipinos are safe? All our information, our bank account numbers, our addresses, because we remain all vulnerable. I just heard this recently, these terms: smishing, vishing, quishing for QR codes.
Yes.
Of course, earlier you had phishing.
Yes.
Yes. How are you dealing with banks and financial institutions?
The innovativeness of cyber criminals is only matched by the creativity of our cybersecurity officers. So it's really a cat and mouse game. So the banks are very much responsive to all of these vulnerabilities, and they do have their own cybersecurity network. It's a cluster on the banking and finance sector that they cooperate and they share information as to where the vulnerabilities are, and they now quickly plug those vulnerabilities.
All right. The issue of the national ID system, which you mentioned, no? It looks like only 60 to 70 million Filipinos have signed up for the national ID system. And the President wants 92 million IDs issued by the middle of 2023. So how can the DICT help realize this goal?
Well, the challenge actually is not in the capturing of this information, because we're progressing actually ahead of schedule. So 70 million to 92 million should not be a problem by mid next year. The issue is the actual printing of the plastic tangible ID card that's facing some headwinds in the Bangko Sentral, where the printing facilities cannot seem to keep up with the demand. So what we're looking at is deploying digital IDs that will be deployed on your mobile phones, and that would be a quick solution to rolling out the national ID.
When do you think will this be a reality? I mean, digitizing our national IDs rather than having our IDs physically. When do you think will that materialize?
Before the end of the year. That should be already out before the end of the year.
And what other kinds of problems do you foresee in terms of interconnectivity, in terms of cybersecurity, that our kababayans have to be watching out for in the next year or so?
Well, as connectivity becomes more pervasive, our kababayans, especially those in the remote areas, have to be educated on how to protect themselves once these are opened up. So education is very important, cyber awareness on not only how they can leverage technology for their own benefit, but how to protect themselves against threats. And I think we have to work with all our educational departments, institutions, in order to send this training out so they are not victimized.
Thank you so much, Secretary Uy, for sharing with us the programs and projects of the DICT in the near to medium term. We appreciate your joining us for this one-on-one interview.
Always a pleasure, Rico.
And this is a CNN Philippines special presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Rico Hizon. Stay safe, stay healthy. Have a great day ahead.